Hey booktube! 'Tis finally the season of goth. I am in my element now. I love this season. I love October, I love Halloween and spooky times and autumn and winter, and I am so ready for this season to begin. We all know that last month was like maybe not my best reading month, so this month I'm kind of challenging myself to read more than I've ever read before. This is going to be a very big TBR, guys. Prepare yourself for things that are ghoulish and spooky and gothic and horror and all sorts of like spooky, spoopy Halloween goodness. 'Tis the season, and I'm living for it. So over the past few months I have acquired a lot of like spooky, horror, Halloween type feeling books, and I've always set them aside and I've thought, I'll read that around Halloween, I'll read that around Halloween, I'll read that around Halloween. Halloween time is upon us. It is October. So I have gathered quite a lot of like spooky books and things that I've decided that I wanted to read, and now essentially this month I'm going to be reading like all of my gothic, horror, spooky type Halloween feeling books, as well as some new releases. So I think in total there are going to be 11 books on my TBR this month. That's a lot. But anyway, you came here for the TBR, so let's get started. The first book on my TBR is a reread, and it is possibly one of my favourite books of all time. It is, of course, Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice. This is potentially my number one favourite book of all time. It's up there vying with a few. I haven't quite decided yet, I'm very indecisive. But without a doubt, I love this book. If you like vampires and you haven't picked this up yet, this is sort of the novel that sort of redefined the vampire genre. And yeah, I feel like a lot of modern day vampire literature kind of owes itself to Anne Rice sort of like changing up the game and making them like popular and attractive again. So essentially the story follows a man called Louis de Pointe-du-Lac, who, that's a mouthful. He's like a young nobleman, he's a plantation owner, and he's going through a bit of a hard time after, I think it's his brother's death. And it was like in some sort of weird circumstances. And then to top everything off, he ends up becoming a vampire. And it's told in sort of like an interview format, but you wouldn't really know it. It's mainly just like long run-on first-person prose. And essentially he is telling his life story in what was at the time the modern day, I think it's the 70s, to an interviewer just because he finally thinks it's time for him to tell the story of his very long and sad life. This book is very short, and this is just the perfect time of year to pick this up. It's just, I know it's kind of an older one, but to me it definitely stands the test of time. It's just, I love everything about this novel, and I'm really excited to reread it and see if my opinions have changed, see if I pick up anything else that I may have missed before. But yeah, I love this book. It is perfect for this time of season, and I would highly, highly recommend it, especially if you love vampires. Book number 2 on my spooky October TBR isn't really a spooky book, and it's not been released yet, but I'm sure you can guess what it is. It is, of course, Wayward Son by Rainbow Rowell. I am so excited to read this book. In the UK, I believe it comes out on the 3rd of October, which is why I have not read it yet. I feel like the US maybe already have it. Very jealous. I think by the time this video goes up I will have it. I will have like my grubby little magpie paws all over it. But it is the sequel novel to Rainbow Rowell's Carry On, which is sort of like a Harry Potter-esque setup, but it reads much more like a contemporary, and it features a male-male romance, and it's set at a magic school, but plot sort of plays a much like a smaller role than just the characters and their interactions, I think. So I really enjoyed this when I read this last year in 2018, and since it was announced that we were getting a sequel, I have been very, very, very excited, and I kind of want to know where the story's going to go. I feel like I've heard that it's going to be like an American road trip story, which I don't think I've ever read like an American road trip story. But I don't know, it just gives me like really just fun vibes, and I kind of want to see like what happens with these characters and where the world goes, and I just want to know what's going to happen to my boys. It's obviously not really a spooky one, it's much more light-hearted, but it does feature like magic and that sort of thing, so I feel like it's in keeping with the season at least. The third book I want to get to this month in October is Wakenhurst by Michelle Paver. So I admit this kind of was a cover buy for me when I was in Blackwell's. It is like a very short gothic novel, but like I'll buy anything with like a corvid on the front. Crows, magpies, ravens, jackdaws, whatever. If it's got a little corvid bird on the front, I'm gonna buy it. So I can't remember what English county this is set in. I know it's in the south. I mean, I'm northern, so like everything's in the south. But I believe it follows like a girl who lives in like maybe like an old manor house on the fens with her father, and one day he finds like a painting, like a medieval painting of a devil in a graveyard, and weird things start to happen. I think he gets obsessed with it, and there's like spooky, maybe ghostly, maybe witchy things going on. And I think it's maybe up to the girl to sort of like unravel the mysteries of the fens and work out what's happening, and it just seems quite like, I don't know, eerie, ghostly, gothic, and I'm quite excited to read this one. I really don't know much about like the plot. I've never heard anyone else on BookTube even talk about this book, so I don't know if that's like a good thing, like it could be a hidden gem, or maybe nobody's interested, but I'm definitely interested, and yeah, I'm really intrigued to get round to this one. The next book on my TBR I have heard mixed things about, and that is Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. The sort of like synopsis everyone gives is lesbian necromancers in space, which like does sound like the kind of thing that I would love to read. But then a lot of other people have said that yes, those things are there, but it's like that's not what the book is. So I'm interested to see like what the book is actually about, because I haven't really heard any other, I guess, explanation of what the plot to this may be. But there are lesbians who are necromancers and they are in space, so I believe all those things are true. So I mean, it has the potential to be great. I just want to show you the cover though, because one thing about this cover that I couldn't tell from every time anybody else has ever held it up, I thought she just had her face painted like a skull, but that's not the case. She's actually wearing aviator glasses, which honestly just makes this so much cooler. Like, I couldn't tell that she was like smirking and wearing aviators, and I'm like, that gives this cover like a whole different vibe to me. It looked quite dark, but now it looks quite like fun. Do you know what I mean? It's gonna sound weird. I kind of get Final Pam vibes from this. I don't know, it's like a weird, I think it's just the glasses, but like I get a little bit of a Final Pam vibe. So this is the Illumicrate edition that comes with these sprayed edges, and it is signed. So like this is a really nice edition of this book, so I really hope I do like it. I feel like this might just be like a little bit of light-hearted, like, I don't know, like a dark space opera type, maybe, I'm not entirely sure. But I feel like it'll break up like some of the rest of the books on this TBR. I don't really read sci-fi, and I feel like this might be just a bit more like punchy than like, you know, sad and depressing gothic. So yeah, I'm really excited to read this one and see what I think of it in comparison to everyone else, because it seems to be quite a divisive book. I always forget to put them behind me. The next book on my TBR I shouldn't even have my hands on yet, because I got this book 2 weeks early, and I don't know why, but thanks Waterstones. And that book is The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh. So this book, I'm really intrigued. It's a YA, and I feel like it's possibly going to be romance heavy, but it is vampires. And it's been a while since anyone's really decided to come back and do vampires. And like this cover is beautiful and very gothic, and like it touches my little dark gothic heart. And I love this cover so much, so I'm really hoping that the story inside here is good. The only thing that gives me like pause is that this is 1800s New Orleans vampires, and Interview with the Vampire is also primarily set in New Orleans. So also, is it New Orleans or is it New Orleans? I'm British, please somebody help me in the comments. I've seen a lot of people pick this up, and like a lot of booktubers mention like this is a really unique setting that's never been done before, and I'm like, I would say this is like the second most famous vampire novel of all time after Dracula. I know some people might want to say Twilight, but like Twilight wouldn't have existed without this, so just putting that out there. But yeah, I hope it doesn't feel like a cheap YA version of like this setting. I hope it feels like its own thing, and because obviously it is dipping its toes into like the same setting as a very well established vampire story already, so like I hope it doesn't just feel like a YA version of that. I feel like that could be quite like a dangerous thing if I'm just always comparing it to something that I think is basically flawless. So I think it has the potential to be great, because like I know I like that setup, but I just don't want it to feel too familiar, if you know what I mean. I want it to be its own thing, so I have high hopes, but also I'm kind of worried. So I think this book follows a 17-year-old girl. It's a YA, so I'm assuming it's a girl in her late teens. In this book, New Orleans is run by the dead. I feel like the vampires are in charge. And Celine somehow ends up becoming involved with the vampires in her city, even though she's a human. And I feel like I've heard mention that this book is like almost like a murder mystery. Like bodies start turning up, and she's worried that someone she knows is responsible for this, and it's kind of like a who can you trust sort of scenario while she's trying to work out like who the culprit is and what's really going on. So that seems fresh, that is intriguing. I'm pretty sure that there's a vampire romance in this, and I've heard that it's like dark and gothic, and do you know, I don't normally like romance, but like I will always make exceptions for some broody dark vampires, like please. Yes, so who knows, maybe I'm gonna like really enjoy this. Like I'm trying to really get on board with this because like you say vampire romance and I'm like, I'll have a piece of that cake. The only thing about this book is I was super psyched to get it 2 weeks early, and then look, the UK copy doesn't contain a map, and this book is supposed to come with a map. It has a map of the city of New Orleans, and I think it has like places like pinpointed on the map so that you can get like your bearings while you're reading, and I need that. I refer to maps a lot, so like I have no idea. I think I'm going to have to order a second copy from the US. I don't know why the Americans get the map and the British don't get a map. Why do we not get a map? Okay, these next few, like I really went hard on the vampires, guys. So next is another reread for me, and I really want to read Bram Stoker's Dracula. It has been a long time since I read this, and this edition is like so small and so cute. I don't think I need to give much synopsis about Dracula. Like, it's Dracula, it's the vampire novel. So yeah, the main reason that I'm reading this now is because the next book in the TBR kind of follows on. You'll see what I mean. Because the next book I want to read is Dracul by J.D. Barker and Dacre Stoker. I don't know if I'm saying Dacre right, but what can you do? So this is the copy that I actually spray painted black. You can tell. So this is kind of like, I feel like it's a slightly meta narrative on like the Dracula canon. I think that Bram Stoker himself is like a character in this, and he's beset by vampires, but while he's also doing this writing, I think it's maybe from the perspective of like he were researching real vampires to write his novel Dracula. I think is kind of the setup. I could be wrong, but I think that's the setup. So Dacre Stoker is obviously, I think he's like the great-grandson of, or the great-great-grandson, I'm not sure, of Bram Stoker, and so obviously he's got access to like additional notes and things, or other things that like the Stoker estate might have, so he's kind of got the monopoly on finishing like the Dracula canon, and I don't know which way I'm going to sit with this. I might love this and think, yeah, this is a great like addition to the potential canon of this universe, or maybe I'm going to think you should not have touched the classic, like leave it alone. So I kind of want to see like what my opinion is going to be. But I'm definitely really looking forward to reading this one. Like I picked this up for like £5 in an Asda, so like I kind of can't go wrong with it. But also, I'm really hoping it's going to be good. Still on the theme of vampires, the next book I want to read in October is The Quick by Lauren Owen. Okay, number one reason to read this, vampires. Number two reason, this is set in Yorkshire. Guess who is a Yorkshire lass? Me. From what I remember when I bought this, it follows, I think, a brother and sister living in Victorian Yorkshire, which, like, Yorkshire is, like, never the setting for books, so I'm so here for this. And I think the brother ends up getting like swept up in this like exclusive London club, and the other thing I know is that there are vampires in this, so I'm guessing they're going to have something to do with like this exclusive club. Maybe it's a club of vampires, I'm not really sure, but I bought this a while ago and this one is like an ex-library copy, so like I really need to do something about that. And I'm not gonna lie, this one's pretty chunky. It's just over 500 pages, but like I'm gonna have to work really hard if I want to read like all of these books. Finally, moving away from the vampires for a bit, I would really like to read this month The Meaning of Night by Michael Cox. This one, when I hold it, kind of gave me like vampire vibes because of like the whole Gothic thing, but I think this one really is possibly like dark academia. I believe it's a story about like, I think this is like a dark Gothic Victorian thriller murder mystery kind of thing. I don't normally read like mystery thriller type things. I don't know, I don't think there's anything fantastical in here. I think it's just like dark Gothic human nature as opposed to like fantastical creatures such as vampires. So yeah, I think it's following like a guy who feels like he's destined for greatness and he'll do anything to get it there. The synopsis mentions like murder, deceit, love and revenge, which all very strong themes in, you know, the Gothic genre. And I just realised there was a quote on the back, which is, "After killing the red-haired man, I took myself to Quinn's for an oyster supper. Complete disregard for the meaning of human life, but like, sure. sure, I mean, why not? I'll read about it. This one is like, I think this is the biggest book on my TBR this month. This is like 6,500 pages, something like that. It's about 600 pages, I'm not entirely sure. Of all the books on this list, this is the one where I feel like I either won't finish it, or I won't get to it, or I'll just fail. Like, it's very long, and it's the most out of my comfort zone of any of these books, just because it's like, there's no fantasy in this. So yeah, I feel like if I'm gonna fail, it's gonna be this book. I'd really like to try and read it, but whether I can read this in like the 4 days that I probably have, considering how many books I want to read, this is gonna be a challenge. So after that brick of a book, I thought I'd pick up something short, so I think I would also like to read The Monk by Matthew Lewis. This is, I think this is one of the books that I said was like on my, like I really wanted to read it this year. Mainly because it's very short, and when it came out, this I believe was like super controversial. So this was written in 1796 and is described as a Gothic festival of sex, magic and ghastly ghostly violence rarely seen in literature. I mean, I'm definitely gonna read it. I bought this from Whitby many years ago, and I just never got round to reading it. I bought a few other books at the time, and I read those first, so like I just guess I never got round to it. But yeah, I really want to read about like, I don't know, I guess the downfall of a monk. It seems it's very gothic. I'm guessing there's going to be like obviously a lot of like religious overtones in this, which are something that I tend to really enjoy actually in books. So yeah, dark, gothic, sexy, controversy. I'm here for it. And finally, the very, very last book on my TBR, and one that I would really, really like to read, or at least start reading in October, is The Vampire Lestat by Anne Rice. You see, we've come full circle. So aside from starting with Anne Rice, because that's obviously one of my favourites and it's a reread, so like it's nice, it's easy to like kick off the reading month. And this is the sequel, technically. This novel follows Lestat de Lioncourt, who is a major character and like the main vampire, I guess, in all of Anne Rice's The Vampire Chronicles novels. So like after you've read about him in the Interview with the Vampire, you then get to read this one, which is told from his perspective and tells his life story, which being an older vampire is obviously a lot longer. So it tells the story of, I think he was a like French nobleman, and it tells the story of how he became a vampire, all the stuff that went wrong, and like various parts of his life that led him to where he is at the start of the book, which I think is in like kind of like deep vampire sleep, and him coming back into the world. And I think he starts a rock band. I'm pretty sure he starts a rock band. So like, I'm very here for this book. It just kind of like meshes all the parts of like cool gothness that I really like. It's like, yeah, you get like the old, very gothic side of things all the way up into like the modern day where you have like the goth music scene. So like, I'm very excited about this. I haven't actually finished this one. I started reading it when I was like 16 after I read that, but then I got tied up with my exams, so I never ended up getting to finish this. I remember being very concerned about Lestat's relationship with his mother, but like, we'll see if I'm still as concerned this time around. I'm betting I will be. So yeah, this is how I want to close out the month, because I expect this to be like another 4 or 5 star read, because again, I really love Anne Rice, I really love The Vampire Chronicles, so I feel like no matter what happens this month, I'm gonna end on a high note. So yeah, so these are all the books that I would like to read in October. I realise this is a big challenge. I feel like this is like 5,500 pages, which is a lot, and I don't have any of these on audiobook. I don't really listen to audiobook. I only have these in physical copy. So the good thing is, like, I'm very excited for all of them. I feel like I have the potential to love every single one of these. I mean, especially the ones that like aren't rereads and that I don't know about yet. It's like I still feel really good and positive about all of these. But yeah, I'm just so ready for the spooky autumnal gothic season to begin and just fill my soul with like darkness and vampires. And I'm very excited. I'm very ready for it. I'm very ready to be like back in my element, I guess. So yeah, maybe this has given you some ideas for like what you could read in October. I'd also be really interested to know like what other sort of like seasonal type spooky novels everyone else is going to be reading, because I definitely can't add anything else to my TBR. Like, it's maxed out. But also, is anyone else praying for my sanity? Because like, this is a lot to read. Especially after last month, where I only read 2 books in the whole of last month, so I really have to get it together for this month. So yeah, that was my October TBR. Hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm going to be able to read all of this. I would really love to get through all of this, because November is NaNoWriMo, so I don't know if I'm going to read anything in November. So like, because I really don't want to not read any of these. Like, I don't want to have to DNF any of them, just because I don't have time. Like, I need to get on it. I'm really just feeling the spooky vibes. So I guess without any further ado, I'm going to end this video and maybe go start reading because I feel like I need to. Don't forget to check out the rest of my channel if you like the whole goth vibes thing. I think I'm going to be taking my channel in that direction just for the duration of Halloween, so like perhaps join me. So yeah, that was it for this video. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one if I've not been crushed by a mountain of books. Bye!